In this world, killing any living creature grants you an ability. So, some of the powerful can even possess tens of thousands of skills simultaneously. But this man could only hold a maximum of 7. However, his 7 abilities could all evolve infinitely. An ordinary healing ability evolved directly into an immortal divine technique capable of regenerating severed limbs. A simple dash skill eventually reached the level of tearing through the void itself. It was precisely through this power that I managed to join humanity's strongest group of 4 in my 20s. But even this couldn't stop the demon's advancing assault. Soon all humans worldwide were slaughtered to extinction. In the end, only the 4 of us remained. To completely prevent this catastrophe at its source, we prepared to use humanity's final trump card. That was Alcinea's time-space crystal, which, legend claimed, possessed the power to reverse time and return to the past. But it could only send one person back. So I, who had started training 20 years later than them, yet still caught up to their pace, became the optimal choice. They believed that if I could have discovered my potential earlier and chosen 7 powerful skills from the beginning, I might have been able to end this disaster. Just as I stood on the altar, preparing to activate the formation, the church roof was suddenly torn open by a golden dragon. Upon discovering us, it raised its head and began gathering dragon breath in its mouth. Caden told me not to lose focus, then stepped forward and summoned a formation to block this strike. Immediately after, he shouted for Iris and Kane behind him to switch positions, since only he could activate the teleportation formation. Upon hearing this, Iris flashed forward, charging toward the golden dragon in the air with vigorous steps. Reaching directly below it, she thrust her staff into the ground. Instantly, a brilliant shield rose up. Then, Kane swung the great sword in his hands, his entire body radiating high-temperature flames. As the great sword swept down, several smaller dragons lost their lives in an instant. But before he could catch his breath, he saw that the golden dragon remained completely unharmed. Seeing the dragon claw striking toward him, he had no time to dodge and could only raise his sword to block. Instantly, thousands of pounds of pressure spread throughout his entire body. Seeing this, I was about to draw my sword and rush forward to help when Caden stopped me, telling me to focus. Iris turned back and said to leave this to them, and after I returned to the past, I shouldn't act alone anymore, but try to find some teammates. I told her I would do my best. Then Caden also told me I could avoid unnecessary killing, but those who instigated wars must definitely be dealt with, especially that mad sovereign Clementine. No matter what, that guy had to be eliminated. As we spoke, the teleportation formation was nearly ready. The time-space crystal began resonating as it sensed the fluctuations. The next second, after the magic fused with the crystal, the formation successfully activated. The 2 people in front turned back to see this, their tense expressions replaced by relief. When I opened my eyes, I found myself among a crowd of people. I looked up and observed the extremely familiar scene around me, confirming that I had truly succeeded in traveling through time. At this moment, the people around me were still in complete chaos and commotion. They looked at the strange scenery around them, having no idea what had happened. Their panic was understandable. After all, they had just fallen into an alternate dimension. At this time, the phenomenon of missing people had just begun appearing in the real world. Originally, I too had only learned after being transported to this world that all the previously missing people had come here. This world, existing in an intermediate zone, was deeply affected by the abyss formed through devouring other dimensions. Those who had arrived in the alternate dimension first had learned supernatural abilities one step ahead, making their passage here completely unobstructed. Moreover, every corner here was filled with various kinds of strange beasts. After all, humans were transported to this world. The abyss gate would open. The Great War began from that moment. Thinking of this, I examined my body and discovered that my previous skills and all physical attributes had indeed been reset to 0. The time left for me to become stronger was approximately 5 years. However, that guy should also appear around this time. Right as I finished thinking, a crack opened in the sky and something black was about to emerge from within. After it completely emerged, everyone could see clearly that it was something resembling a small demon. It introduced itself as an assistant sprite here to help everyone accelerate their progress. However, I knew what accelerating progress really meant in its words. It meant making us reduce our numbers quickly through infighting. Next, the sprite first welcomed everyone to this alternate world. But before it could say the next sentence, someone interrupted, telling it to cut the crap and quickly send him home. After hearing this, the sprite's expression instantly darkened, saying to let it finish speaking first. The person was also frightened into silence and didn't dare make another sound. The sprite continued saying, "This place would grant everyone unlimited freedom. Had everyone ever fantasized about a world without legal systems, ethics, and morality? Here, you could do whatever you wanted. Not only that, but now even the physical constraints that had always bound you humans had disappeared. From now on, you could become infinitely stronger, according to your own will, just like those characters called heroes in your movies. Next, it would demonstrate for everyone with a snap of its fingers. The body of the person who had just interrupted exploded instantly. This scene shocked the surrounding people while making them afraid to even breathe. The sprite returned to its previous smile, saying it didn't like people who talked too much and were noisy. After a brief silence, people began frantically fleeing in all directions. However, with each snap of the sprite's fingers, the bodies of those who had just been shouting about escaping exploded one after another. The sprite roared that it had already said it didn't like noisy people. The remaining crowd immediately covered their mouths, not daring to make any sound. The next second, the sprite returned to its original expression, saying that here, as long as you killed any living creature or anything else, it would drop runes. As it spoke, it extracted a white stone from a corpse. Then it explained that besides this type, there were 8 other similar stones, all randomly dropped. Although the one in front was the lowest grade white rune, as long as everyone worked hard to grow in the future, they could obtain better runes. The sprite held up the rune to examine it, saying this was a rune that could enhance strength, and asked if anyone wanted it. Everyone immediately backed away upon hearing this, afraid of making this little creature unhappy. At this moment, however, I pushed through the crowd and walked out. Raising my hand to look at the rune before me, I couldn't help but sigh that it had been a long time since I'd used something like this. The sprite was stunned for a moment. Then it flew to my side, saying, "This was very good. I should participate actively just like this." Then it had me extend my hand and asked if I felt it was magical now. The rune would distort the laws to enhance strength. From a scientific perspective, with your original strength, you could only lift 117 kilo of objects, but now it's increased to 122 kilo. Not only that, but runes can also, before it could finish, it stopped abruptly because it saw that I wasn't curious or excited at all. Then it said that in any case, runes would have different effects according to their type. So the more runes you obtained, the more powerful you would become. The only way to survive was to continuously collect runes to make yourself strong. As soon as these words were spoken, the fear on people's faces was replaced by greed. The next second, they began competing to grab the runes that had just fallen on the ground. But the sprite absorbed those runes back into its hands, saying it would keep these runes for itself, and they should go find new ones. This greatly disappointed those who had almost grabbed the runes. Then it said that by touching your right ear, you could open your personal information panel to view the runes you already possessed. Everyone tried this and discovered that a panel would indeed appear. The sprite added that humans' average initial stats were all 10. I looked and saw that after using that rune earlier, my strength had increased by 1 point. Next, the sprite said that to help everyone adapt here quickly, it would provide many benefits. Then, everyone suddenly felt something heavy in their hands. Looking down, they discovered weapons had appeared from nowhere. After the sprite said the tutorial was over, it disappeared on the spot. Suddenly, someone shouted to look behind them. Everyone turned to see that a group of goblins had appeared not far away. These goblins became extremely excited upon seeing the humans. People who sensed something was wrong had already started running toward the back of the crowd. After the goblins moved closer, everyone could see their faces clearly. A girl said not to provoke them and they should slowly retreat, but after retreating only 2 steps, the people at the very back suddenly stopped. Everyone looked back and discovered they were blocked by an invisible wall. This threw everyone into complete panic. More importantly, this wall was continuously contracting backward. Moreover, the wall behind the goblins was also contracting together. Suddenly, someone noticed a door nearby that seemed to lead outside, and they also saw a number on the door. After one person went out, the number on the door changed to 48. People immediately understood that this door might only allow 50 people to exit. So, they began running frantically toward the door. Seeing the situation, I found it laughable. If 100 people united to fight, their chances of winning would be quite good. In my previous life here, 40 people died at the hands of goblins, but now it was different. You had to quickly eliminate these goblins to proceed to the next stage. At this moment, the goblins sensed the humans' cowardice and began charging toward this side. Soon, screams echoed from within the crowd. After I killed one, another had already reached above my head. I first gripped its wrist, then sliced it in half with one stroke. This scene also caught the attention of the surrounding goblins. I first assumed a ready-to-strike pose, preventing other goblins from advancing, then lamented that this decades-old body was too uncomfortable to use. I was already tired after killing just 2 goblins. However, my luck was pretty good this time, as my agility increased by 0.1%. You should know that as agility improves, reaction speed also improves accordingly. At this moment, a goblin behind me took advantage of my distraction to throw a dagger at me. However, having just improved my agility, I heard the sound of air being cut and quickly turned my head. While dodging this strike, I also threw my short blade toward it. The next second, the short blade precisely hit its head, taking its life, seeing me kill their companions one after another. The goblins directly chose 3 to launch a coordinated attack on me. However, in my eyes, they had already become walking runes. As I quickly passed by them, all 3 fell to the ground before they could react. Although my stats had been reset to 0, my combat experience and memories from the previous life were still intact. Other people were stunned after seeing me kill several goblins in succession. However, this also showed them that these monsters could indeed be killed. So the battle between both sides officially began. I also joined in, quickly slaying the goblins before me. Actually, there was no need to be so urgent from the beginning, but I couldn't waste time here because many humans already existed in this world. People who had just arrived here would have a 3-month newbie protection period. As long as they stayed within designated areas, they wouldn't encounter veteran players. But after 3 months, they would have to fight against those with 2 or 3 years of experience. So I had to use this time to quickly become stronger. Caden's decision to send me to this point in time was truly the most correct choice. Before long, this battle came to an end. Looking at the corpses around me, they couldn't believe I had killed more than half the monsters by myself. At this moment, the sprite appeared again. It looked around and said, "My results here were quite impressive, and the number of people had also been reduced appropriately." After saying this, it removed the surrounding invisible walls, and then it crawled. It back into the void crack. After it left, everyone dared to curse at the empty air. At this moment, I opened my information panel to check and discovered that my attributes this time were much stronger than in my previous life. I had also obtained a weapon. Next was figuring out how to quickly become stronger. I remembered that in my previous life, Caden had mentioned there was a hidden dungeon within the tutorial area, and it's a brutal dungeon. However, he hadn't been able to reach the end back then, and he believed no one could clear that dungeon during the newbie period. Nevertheless, he said that even so, he had gained enormous benefits from it, and his current ability to be among the Valkyrie squad members was thanks to that. He also said that if he could return to the past, he would definitely go conquer that dungeon first, which might have allowed him to defeat me. With this in mind, I prepared to set out to find that hidden dungeon, but I needed to handle something first. That was to find the 2 hidden fragments that Caden had told me were concealed within the tutorial area. Just as I was about to leave for the location of the first fragment, I suddenly heard an argument behind me. It seemed a girl was being bothered by a group of men. The men were using the pretext of unity for survival to try to keep the woman with them, while the woman's companions behind her didn't dare step forward to help, seeing they were outnumbered. However, I didn't want to get involved in such matters, because the hidden fragments would automatically disappear after 1 week, and I had to obtain them before then. Suddenly, a guy behind me called out my name. I turned and asked if he knew me. Hearing what I said, those 2 guys were obviously very surprised. The blonde kid stepped forward and asked if I was stupid. Hadn't we been together before being transported here? Hearing this, my brain began racing. Finally, after 1 minute, I remembered they were my classmates. In my previous life, when we were hanging out together, we were transported here. Back then, they died directly in the first round, which was why I couldn't remember them in this life. It should be because I killed more than half the goblins that they managed to survive. The girl, upon seeing me, directly shook off the man's hand with force. Then she turned and ran toward me. Compared to them, I recognized Eleanor at first sight. Those men initially wanted to use forceful methods, but when they saw my face clearly, they stopped in their tracks because they clearly remembered the scene of me single-handedly taking down a group of goblins. However, thinking it over, I might now be exhausted. So he quietly signaled to his subordinates. After they approached and surrounded us, he said they would definitely take Eleanor today. I simply walked up to him and told him in an icy tone to say that again. Sensing my intense killing intent, he unconsciously stepped back 2 paces. I strode forward directly and knocked him aside. When he turned around, his veins bulged instantly as he wanted to make a move. In response, I drew my short blade and asked if he had something to say. Just then, their leader came over, saying they weren't bad people and suggesting we travel with them, since having more people meant better mutual support. From this man's eyes, I could easily see he had already adapted to the rules here. The nature he had originally hidden would make people like him thrive like fish in water after losing constraints. Just as I gripped my dagger, wanting to eliminate them, I suddenly remembered Caden saying to avoid unnecessary killing, and Iris saying not to act alone, but try to find some teammates. After thinking this through, I suppressed my killing intent. Even if I didn't intervene, guys like them would bring about their own destruction. So I turned and left this place. The subordinate wanted to step forward, but was stopped by the leader because the leader wanted to establish their own order here. After this incident, the blonde kid felt that humans here were more terrifying than goblins. Then he looked toward me, feeling that I seemed completely different from before. Previously, seeing me as an orphan, and always sitting alone in corners in a daze, he had thought I was a weakling. At this moment, he ran forward and asked why I had pretended not to recognize them earlier. Faced with such a question, I didn't know how to answer for a moment. Finally, I made up an excuse, saying I had amnesia. Then, I turned my gaze to Elena nearby. Although she had lived quite well in the real world before here, beauty was a double-edged sword. After I led them for a while, the blonde girl behind couldn't help asking where we were going. Elena nearby was also very curious. I said we had arrived and they could see for themselves. Everyone looked up and discovered we had come to a subway station entrance. This was the place where I could obtain the first hidden fragment, Gangnam Station. At this moment, Elena asked what I had brought them here to do, thinking it was troublesome to explain to them. If it weren't for Iris's words, I would definitely act alone. Finally, having no choice, I said that although I had amnesia, I had gained supernatural abilities as a result. So, I felt there were good things down below now that various monsters existed, saying I had supernatural abilities should be reasonable, right? The blonde girl behind asked her companion if it was really okay to follow me like this. After hearing this, I turned and told them they didn't have to follow me since I respected personal choice. Even if they just watched from behind afterward, that was fine with me. After hearing my arrogant tone, the blonde kid felt very annoyed. But they also felt I might really know something. So after consideration, they decided to follow me. Feeling the increasingly eerie atmosphere, the blonde kid ran over and asked if we were going somewhere safe now. I told him no. Now we were going to meet friends who had been living here for a long time. After hearing this, he looked completely incredulous, since who would live in such a place? After walking a bit more, I suddenly stopped. Then I drew my dagger from behind. Before anyone could react, I swung the blade toward Tyler's feet. And under everyone's terrified gaze, I cut a worm by Tyler's foot in half. Tyler was so frightened by my action that he didn't dare breathe. I told them these were green worms, and they would emerge after sensing vibrations from the ground. If bitten by them, losing a chunk of flesh would be considered light. After explaining this to them, I picked up the rune dropped by that green worm. Then I taught them a simple method to eliminate green worms. That was to look at the ground, and if you saw soil bulging up somewhere, stab directly down. After they learned this technique, they felt it was as simple as whack-a-ole. However, the guy with headphones still hesitated to act. Just then, a patch of earth behind him slowly bulged into a large mound. The next second, a green worm burst out and charged toward him. Fortunately, I discovered this in time and quickly flashed over to push him away, then simply swung twice to chop this green worm to pieces. Tyler came over and asked how I knew these things. I just turned back and told him this was my supernatural ability. Everyone was half believing. Only Elena showed admiring eyes. After hunting for a while longer, the ground was covered with runes. When I bent down to collect them, I noticed they were still standing behind me.